大家好，我是数位卡夫特的执行长兼制作人。那今天呢，很高兴有这个机会呢，来跟大家做一个分享。那马上就进入我们的议题。稍等一下。好，今天的议题呢，是游戏开发者不要只顾着开发游戏。那想想除了游戏内容外，要顾的事情吧。那我们就直接进入呢今天的简报。首先呢，介绍一下我自己。目前是数位卡夫特的创办人兼制作人。然后呢，我曾经在澳洲的这个 WikiWitch Software 担任过资深美术，同时呢，也有一些兼课的经历。之前也在这个一些论坛呢，还有 APGS 呢。有过演讲，发表过自己的一些经验分享。那我的专业领域呢，基本上是美术的背景。那这几年呢，逐渐呢就是朝向制作人的方向这样子。所以对整体游戏的规划呢，还有想法呢，是有一点点经验。好，那介绍一下我们的团队哈。我们的团队目前呢是一个独立游戏开发工作室，有7个人。那我们主要的这个任务呢，就是独立游戏的研发。目前代表的作品有《众神之斗》、《动物之斗》。那从今年开始呢，我们也尝试着呢，协助其他的游戏做这个独立游戏的发行。我们除了手机平台和 PC Steam 以外呢，也有发行到 Switch 的经验。那我们同时有 Switch 跟 PS4 的这个发行权，也可以提供这样的服务。那一方面呢，我个人是一个很喜欢回答问题的人，那以及我们在团队成立到现在有4年的时间，所以我们有一些经验可以分享，所以有时候也会提供一些咨询的这个就是回答别人的问题的这种事情这样。好，那首先呢，第一个是我们的作品《众神之斗》，是一个以世界各地神明为主题的格斗游戏。因为题材的关系呢，曾经被4个国家禁过。那在这个也是我们很宝贵的经验，大家有机会的话，可以来找我再进行分享。在2017年7月的时候呢，用抢先体验的方式推出了 PC 的版本，2019年正式 release。那同时也推出过 Switch 的版本。有兴趣的话呢，可以扫描我们的 QR code 呢，更去了解一下这款游戏。第2款呢是《动物之斗》，这是以网络迷因的动物为主题的格斗游戏，在去年9月的时候推出，然后呢，今年4月呢也推出了 Switch 的版本。那当然我们有一些后续的规划，同样的，如果有兴趣的话呢，可以请各位扫描这个 QR code 去了解一下。好，那刚刚提到嘛，开发游戏以外的事情。我想在你要开发一个游戏之前呢，实作之前，我觉得先定义一下你的游戏属性，这是很重要的事情。好，那我这边写了一个作品，所谓的作品，泛指就是像艺术品、创作之类的东西。那创作呢，就是阐述自身的想法为主轴，别人的认同并不是你主要追求的东西。我想这是创作的核心吧。很多艺术品也是这样子。好，那我定义了一个东西叫做产品。产品呢，是以市场需求为主要的考量，就是玩家喜欢什么，或者是现在什么样的主题夯，什么样的玩法，什么样的类型是大家喜欢的，被大家接受的，称之为产品。那我认为一个独立游戏，应该是要同时符合一点点的作品跟一点点产品的这种定义。 所以我画在中间哈。这边写到，理想中的游戏呢，理想中的独立游戏是一个适度表现自己的想法，同时考量大众以及玩家的接受度。举例来说吧，假设你要做一个横向卷轴的这个游戏，通常呢，大概目前80%-90%吧，横向卷轴游戏都是从左到右的冒险。但是你可能觉得想要独特一点，刻意的呢从右到左的这种横向卷轴冒险，当然这个创意会非常的特别，但是也因为这样子忽略了大众的习惯，有可能会让你的游戏显得非常的奇怪。所以呢，我认为在独立游戏创作的这个之前的发想呢，应该要适度的表现自身的想法之外呢，也要适度的考虑一下市场的接受度，甚至玩家的接受度。接下来呢，是我觉得要建议大家啦，重视商业规划的重要性。商业规划呢，就是以这个比较逻辑的方式呢，去思考你要做些什么。第一个想做些什么，在想你的游戏呢，可能想法一定真的很赞，但是在做之前呢，最好是去搜寻一下有没有类似的游戏。如果有的话，那他们竞品的表现如何？他们的评价在 Steam 上面，或者在网络上面有怎么样的评价？什么东西做得好，什么东西做得不好？那以及你要如何跟他们表现出不同的差异？我觉得这都是要想想看。好，再来就是你需要什么？团队是否已经组成啦？还有足够的预算，以及呢，很重要就是检视你的团队或者你自己是否有那个足够的技术呢，去符合你的预期。当然，以我个人的角度，我非常鼓励大家就是尝试各种不同的挑战。但是呢，实际上来讲呢，如果过于的好高骛远，假设你只有3个人，但是你想做一个，比如说像最经常看到的这种3A 级的游戏，基本上有非常大的难度，以及接下来要讲的可能会耗费极长的时间，所以要做多久，要花多久的时间才能够回收，这也是要考虑的。这3个重点，我觉得甚至可以在开发之前就做一些思考。讲到这边的话呢，资金呢也是非常重要的。大家都知道，独立游戏都比较辛苦，所以资金是开发中一定会遇到的问题。这边有几个资金的筹措方式给大家参考。第一，你可以工作一段时间之后呢，自己准备一些资金，然后再就是群众募资。我们台湾也有一些群众募资成功的案例，也有在网络上进行一些分享，有机会也可以直接跟他们交流。然后再来就是比较像是所谓的天使投资，家里的帮忙啊，或者是一些欣赏你的朋友啊之类的，以及我们政府呢以及相关的单位都有一些补助案，那大家也可以多方的去了解。再来另一个就是发行商，有时候呢会提供一些预付的款项，那不要忘了你的时间也是一种成本，时间就等于金钱，这句话是不假的。不要以为用免费的时间来做呢，就等于零成本。无形之中，你所花费的成本其实也非常的可观。刚刚提到说要多久才能回收，其实呢，简单来讲，你可以用时薪来计算。那你就会检视说，你真的省了很多钱吗？你的辛苦，你的人生，这都是需要考虑的部分。这边呢，会给大家3个建议。第一，专注在所谓的 big picture， 就是你的游戏整体要怎么样，你需要先怎么样的架构你的游戏，然后再来考虑细节的部分。那第二，规划好每个阶段性的目标。我觉得有些创作人就不习惯好好计划，但是呢，随着我的经验我觉得好好的计划阶段性的目标设定里程碑，会有效的对于你的专案管理有帮助。那第3个就是花该花的钱。那在独立游戏的这种 每次budget都很紧张的状态下，很多人会想要省一些钱，但其实，假设你的游戏专注在砍杀好了，我当然建议你把大部分的时间，花在这个游戏的特色上。那是不是在有一些，比如说比较不重要的元素，场景啊，或者是一些装饰性的物件，可以考虑去使用一些付费的这个东西来去做一个快速的填充或架设。好，就像第一点所说的，先把一个大概的雏形做出来呢，也会比较有说服力。然后你有时间之后呢，再回去慢慢修改或是取代。永远记得，看似免钱的东西，往往需要付出更多的代价，包括你自己的时间。好，刚刚在资金的部分，我们有提到所谓的发行商。何谓发行商 （Publisher）？ 我们在这边假设有一些独立游戏的开发者还是不知道，或者是对这个东西的定义很含糊，所以我觉得还是有必要稍微的去介绍一下。发行商跟代理商其实是基本上是一样的东西。那简单来说，各位要对发行商有一个认知，他就是帮你卖游戏的人，他提供的是一种服务。那通常有一些发行商也会很热衷的给你一些建议，但是本质上它是一种服务。它能做什么呢？提供行销以及销售的服务，并且抽取一定比例的费用。好，那简单来讲就是帮你卖，然后抽成嘛。那至于抽成的比例呢？这个可以有机会再来找我询问。每一个发行商的抽成比例都不太一样，甚至呢，偶尔也会有这种提供所谓的 MG 就是保证金最低销售保证金 （Minimum Guarantee） 的这种预付款，来进行跟你讨论以及谈判的手段。比如说你在经济上可能有一些需求，他们可能会先付你可能1万套、2万套的钱，来做一个来希望你跟让他们发行的一种这个谈判的手段。好，那我需要发行商吗？常常也会有人问这个问题。没错哦，现在已经是人人都可以发行的时代了。只要你有一点Google 一下呢，在手机上就可以发行。那甚至 PC 的平台。好，但是在这之前，你要想想看，你的游戏受众想要在哪里？比如说，假设你做了一个很美式的游戏，那你是否会英文呢？你对那边的情况是否了解呢？这个时候可能就需要委托一个对当地比较有研究，或者是已经有一些经验的发行商。好，还有你的游戏规模是不是需要？假设你只是一个非常小品的东西，或许根本不需要发行商来这个帮你发行就是其实还是要看看你们自己怎么想但是通常，如果说是一个比较简单尝试性的作品，甚至是一个阐述你自己想法的作品，我认为其实是需要去思考这个发行商的必要性。再来就是你还有你的团队是否有余力去行销或者是接洽对外的事务。当然我们知道游戏如果上架之后是非常忙的。那你们想要专注在更多的这个研发上面呢，是不是委托其他人去帮你们销售？这也是可以考虑的。再来就是你们是否需要资金上面的挹注，就像我刚刚说的 MG 这个简单的这个预付金来去做一个快速的舒缓。好，那我想要说明的是特定的平台主机啦，比如说像 Switch、PlayStation 4、Xbox 等等。虽然说它的条件还是很严苛啦，但是假设有机会的话，其实一般来开发者还是有机会可以得到在自己在上面发行的机会。但是以我这边的角度呢，我会建议，如果你想要上主机平台的话呢，或许就是需要发行商协助，这个到时候也可以考虑看看。好， 刚刚讲到行销嘛，我觉得呢，行销简单来说就是让世界知道你的存在。所以这边呢，有一个副标题：躲起来10年磨一剑的时代呢，已经过去了所以呢，一定要想办法在开发之余呢，让大家知道你在做什么。那有一些人会说，哦，我又没有钱行销，我要怎么行销？其实行销是一个很广义的词汇啦。行销不一定要大把的钞票，甚至一开始就可以做。比如说像什么呢？社群的经营如果你没有粉丝团没有粉丝专业或者是任何的社群页面 ，Twitter、Discord， 赶快去创一个吧，让人家找得到你，有地方跟你交流。好。展会比赛，这是一个成本极低的曝光机会，一定要好好把握。而且，如果你得奖的话呢，甚至有媒体主动来访问，还比自己投稿更有效率。大家会有机会看到，也可以在展会接触玩家等等，是一个非常好的机会。所以，假设你的游戏在开发中符合任何的展会或者是比赛，建议一定要去参加。讲座、交流还有聚会，那这是一个了解产业动向，还有同业交流的一个非常重要的这个举动，而且你可以在这边呢，甚至问到一些资源还有情报。像我们以前自己在开始做的时候，根本不知道什么补助案，根本也不知道就是其他人在做什么。那同业有时候呢会给你一些良心的建议，甚至让他们玩快你的游戏。其实都是可以的。好，最后呢，想要跟大家介绍说一下心态的建议。那我们都知道，每一个人其实你开发游戏的话，技术力是毋庸置疑的。但是呢，我觉得呢，要适度的表现自己，不要太害羞，但是也不要过度的自我感觉良好。然后呢，像刚刚所提到的，与人讨论，避免闭门造车。你一定要听听看别人的意见，有时候呢反而会激发你新的想法，不一定。好，再来就是没有100%的完美，永远都有进步的空间。但是呢，这边要补充一点，也不应该就是钻牛角尖，一定要把一个东西做得最好。毕竟呢，之前常常在跟人家开玩笑说，只有上架才是真的。你如果做了很久很久，然后最后你决定没有把它推出，其实还是非常可惜的。然后最后，如果有机会的话，也分享你的经验，告诉一些不知道的人，让他们对整个独立游戏的产业以及开发以外要做的事情呢，有更深一层的了解。好，最后呢，这是我们数位卡夫特的粉丝团，有机会可以帮我们按个赞。然后，如果你有游戏发行的需求以及需要任何咨询的建议，欢迎联系我。我是 Ken， 然后下面是我的 email 信箱。那今天的分享就到这边咯，谢谢。然后有机会再一起交流吧。
Salon 的观众们，大家好！很开心有这个机会能跟各位聊聊我们最近推出的新游戏《实况旅人》。《实况旅人》是一款模拟实况主在奇幻世界冒险的 RPG。玩家可以透过类似 Facebook、Instagram 的界面与游戏内的角色互动，一步一步朝着网红之路迈进。今天想借由这10几分钟与各位聊聊《实况旅人》的前世今生。我是 Boris。在 Gametropy 扮演的角色是说好听点是营运长啦，但其实营运嘛，就是什么事情都要做啊，你要写程式，要会美术，要会程式企划，各式各样行政的工作。说好听点是营运长，那简单来说就是一个斜杠青年或打杂的角色这样。说到做游戏，可能很多人会想要从质化或量化的角度去分析 TA， 去思考使用者想要需要什么东西。但今天只有短短的时间，所以我更想聊聊实况旅人这整个游戏整件事情发展的起心动念，还 还有我们在过程中遇到了什么很崩溃的经验，以及在那个当下我们做了什么样的决定。时间回到了2018年，也就是荒漠乐园刚上市一段时间之后，我们在从那个时候开始思考接下来应该要做什么，回头检视我们擅长什么。从过去的经验来看，我们好像觉得自己蛮擅长做手机游戏的，好像蛮擅长做跟生活经验结合的东西。那什么事情？我们想到一个新的命题，就是什么事情是它发生在手机上，你会觉得它非常的合理，它不像是一个 PC 或 console 的游戏呢？我们找到的一个很关键的一个素材就是社群网站。它这个社群网站就是一个因为手机的发展而出现的东西，所以它出现在手机上，就觉得它合理到一个不行。这就成为了我们这一款游戏发展的最一开始的起心动念。而这样的起心动念呢，通常就来自我们觉得这件事情非常的酷，于是乎就开始了一连串制作 prototype 的日子，想要让这个起心动念跟某一种 gameplay 能很完美的结合在一起。我们想到的第一个主题呢，就是物流模拟，试着把它变成一个物流管理游戏。因为毕竟是一款模拟游戏嘛，我们的上一款也是一款模拟游戏，觉得好像有一些过往的经验可以套用，所以在这款游戏里面呢，玩家扮演一个物流业者，控制进出货、仓储、管销。同时呢，很重要的一件事是观看你的涂鸦墙上有谁想要什么东西，然后你要把它卖给他。所以慢慢的把我们觉得很重要的这个社群的观念导到这个游戏里面。但是这款游戏这个 prototype 其实只维持了很短的一段时间，因为回头检视这样子的一个架构，你会觉得社群平台在这款游戏里面其实是一个可有可无的存在，它甚至不需要一个有社群感的东西，它都可以用像是订单checklist 之类的东西来放进这款游戏里面。所以后来我们就逐渐的淘汰掉了这样的概念，继续寻找下一个适合的主题还有 gameplay。我们想到的下一个题材是 RPG， 觉得它应该要是一个 RPG 好像更对了哦。这个时刻好像一切都变得更具体了，因为 RPG 会有角色，有角色就会有互动，有互动就能够产生社群。所以可以想象，如果有角色在地图上游走，遇到了 NPC， 遇到怪产生互动，是不是很像在录 vlog？ 是不是可以把这个世界的人就像是把战斗的 vlog 上传到社群平台那样子，把社群平台加进一个 RPG 里面。实况跟旅人这两个概念就是在这个时期确立的。不过虽然说它是一个很初步的概念，但我们还是觉得包装好像有点硬凹就是好像还是少了什么，社群感好像不够强烈，也好像没有办法赋予什么小小的故事在这款游戏里面。因为想要让它更靠近手机的使用体验一点，所以如果旧的 gameplay 在地图上游走的 gameplay 它没有办法创造够好的体验的话，是不是就干脆直接换一个？这段时期我把它称之为重新发明轮子的过程因为毕竟许多 UI 都是在原生的 native app 的 UI 会有的东西，但我们要把它重新写出来，我们要把贴文、讯息、限时动态，甚至是直播的一个界面，通通把它重新塑造出来。而原本被我们淘汰的在地图上游走的这个 gameplay 呢，后来呢就想说，既然是要录 vlog 嘛，那不如就把直播、把实况这件事情当成一个 gameplay。而这种多种类型的文本互相串联在一起的这种机制，我们其实也花了不少时间在琢磨narrative 的系统设计。当然，总归一句话就是，这么多种跟实况、跟社群相关的 feature， 我全都要。这个我全都要，其实后来也埋下了一部分好像很多事情都永远做不完的一些隐忧。我们其实是在今年的2月底接洽双平台的编辑，在那个时候就排定了游戏上线的时间是在今年的4月30日。 就这样才能配合编辑发稿啊，或是安排编辑推荐的时程。但不知道该说是幸运还是冥冥之中天注定，因为苹果审查的关系，我们 iOS 最后是延后1周才上线，而因为某一道墙的关系，在中国区的上线呢，我们则是直接延期了1个月，就是到5月底才会上线。而在游戏就正式上线了嘛，在上线当天的大概10个小时之内，我们其实收到了1万多个安装。回到刚才有说到，我们埋下了因为我全都要而埋下的那些永远做不完的隐忧，但是基于该交给市场验证，还是交给市场，所以尤其免费游戏更应该如此啦。所以我们就一个在有一点做不完的状况下直接上线了，然后游戏就爆炸了。在4月30号当天晚上，Google Play 的预估评分是3.3分。与此同时，我们也收到了 Google 编辑的来信，问说：“你能把那个分数拉回4分吗？不然我们可能会把你的游戏从推荐的平台上面、推荐的那个版位上面下架。”其实就像以前当学生的时候，自己测起来都没什么问题。但期末报告上台 demo 的时候，就会各种出包，总之许多大大小小的问题就在游戏中浮现。有一部分可能是在游戏上线的过程中有一点草率，可能有些内容没有测出来，而另一部分则就是有一些想法，有一些使用者的想法可能跟我们想的不太一样。收到非常非常多使用者的回馈，像是某一关之后变得非常难，然后游戏内的一些问题，游戏内的内购或是广告都有一些问题，然后操作体验不佳，诸如此类的。所以规划什么事情是重要且急迫的，就变成当时的首要之务，最重要的一件事。我们思考的概念是，有价值、有付出的先，玩家玩不下去的是第2件重要。玩家看到的东西是第3重要，最后才是玩家看不到的东西。然后中间再试着穿插一些很快速可以修好的一些小东西，最后能达到1日1更的结果。所以在5月1号劳动节连假的那一周，我们短短5天之内就更新了4个版本。当然这件事情有好有坏啦，但我们觉得是利大于弊。另外一件事情是，我之所以会得到很低的分数，其实很重要的一个部分是，当你在使用一个东西的时候，一定是它很不好用，或你的体验不佳，你才会想要上去骂人，想要给1星评价。当你觉得它好像很好用，或是餐厅很好吃啊的时候，你其实不会想要去 Google Map 或是想要去 Google Play App Store 给它5星的评分。所以在我们的某一版更新，这4版的其中一版更新的时候呢，我们就把一个原本被埋的比较后面的鼓励玩家到 App Store、Google Play 评分的这个页面，把它往前提到了一个游戏最一开始会遇到的第一个 sweet spot。在这个地方，请玩家，如果你觉得游戏体验不错的话，请给我们一些不错的评分。然后也是因为这个评分的机制上去之后，我们才在很短的时间之内，60个小时之内，把游戏从3.3分再拉回4.3分。那说到这款游戏的 TA 好了，从游戏的最核心的价值就是我们的起心动念是我们想要把社群做到游戏里面，而我们打造的骨头呢，是一款借由模拟 Facebook、Instagram， 然后各种社群现象、社会现象的一款 RPG 游戏。那玩家所填充的肉呢，则是很多很多的关卡，很多很多的内容，很多很多的可以浓的东西。于是我们产生了2种完全截然不同的 TA， 一种是觉得你的故事很深刻，觉得风格很创新，觉得很像在用一些真实的 App， 而另外一种玩家呢，另外一种 TA 则是我想要很多很多的技能，我想要很强的怪，我想要很难的关卡，我想要买掉所有的装备。那如何满足这2种截然不同类型的玩家呢？我们 游戏上线了1个月，我们其实目前还说不准，但是我们基本上是维持着一个我全都要的状态。我们想要在故事的层面能够让玩家有良好的体验，同时也要让玩家有足够多的游戏内容可以浓，因为这好像也是我们一部分玩家非常渴望的东西。其实这款游戏在发展的过程中，我们有一些想要讲的故事，也就是刚才所提到的骨头的部分。想要在实况旅人里面去浓缩网络社会的各种现象，无论是从网络猎巫，从同温层的效应，或是现在的大众媒体到底喜欢什么，是不是都放了一些非常腥膻色的新闻在社群上面，或是在探讨网络舆论是怎么影响事情的发展，这些都是在游戏的故事中慢慢去阐述的。而我觉得想到一件就是卢广仲他在2018年吧的2018的金曲奖，那时候他的一首歌《希亚》得到了最佳年度歌曲。他上台的得奖感言，他说他在写歌的过程中，创作的过程中有一个最浪漫的状态，就是刚好我喜欢的你也喜欢，我正在做符合大家喜欢的事情。我觉得做实况旅人这款游戏的过程中也有点像这样，就是我们在做一些怀着自己的一些简单的一些理想，想要做一些特别的事情，而刚好有一群喜欢的 TA 能够接收到这件事情，然后从中获得满足，从中获得乐趣，这件事情这样想起来好像其实还蛮浪漫的。不过当然我们也还在这条路上披荆斩棘，游戏也才刚上市还不到1个月，其实很多事情都还在发展中。最后不免俗工商一下，就是我们游戏在双平台都可以下载得到了，所以有兴趣的朋友们其实可以到 App Store 跟 Google Play 下载来玩玩看，搞不好你也可以从中获得一些很有趣的体验哦。
Hi everyone, good day and I hope you are all doing alright. This is my presentation about working with publishers. You may have seen numerous talks about publishers, but either it's coming from the side of the publishers or from the developers. In 10 years of making games, I have experienced working with different publishers, self-publishing, and even publishing other studios' games on Nintendo Switch. I want to share to you what I have learned and the things I wish I knew before I got into these publishing deals. First, a two-part introduction. First, to introduce myself personally. I am Barry Silvestre, also known as Cable. I used to develop Flash games for browser since 2009. It is my first dive into a relationship which is similar to publishing these days. I used to work with sponsors back then. They would give upfront money or full payment to put their logos in my games. In some deals, we earn from ads and revenue share from their website once the game is released. It's similar to publishing to some extent. I also developed Pretentious Game for mobile and Steam, and it was published by Bulky Pix. I will share to you later how it went and what we can learn from it. I also developed and self-published Kill the Plumber for mobile and Steam, and I developed Tower Fortress, which was published by Nitro. It became my best commercially successful game, which led to the creation of the company Cable Games. For our company introduction, Cable Games Private Limited was established in 2018 with my partners Thea and Marlon. We hired Mike Reñevo, the developer of Dungeon Souls. The game made was Jack Axe, which I pitched to Ian Garner from another indie. They agreed to publish our game for PC and Nintendo Switch with PS4 and Xbox to follow. As a company, we were able to reach out to companies like Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox, and we were able to get publishing licenses and dev kits. We have published 3 games for Nintendo Switch so far. It's Tower Tale, Grand Guilds, and Hainan Revolver. So, do you need a publisher? They will usually say they will market your game and you'll get a featuring on the store. You can do that too, but there are publishers who can definitely deliver that and do a lot more, so research on those companies. Beyond that, you may need them to test onboarding and retention of your game, which is costly and time consuming. And some publishers can help you with those with their consultants and user acquisition test groups. They can also help you reach countries like China by accomplishing their government's requirements in submitting games and localization. Besides those, they can also help you get your games to consoles, lend you dev kits, and of course, money. So how do you find publishers? You can find them in game conventions. You can talk to them better. But a simple tweet can also get you a publisher, like in my case with Nitrom. Or a simple post on a forum for games like Touch Arcade. Just be persistent, consistent, and always improve upon your GIFs, videos, and screenshots. Now I am going to talk about what I am here for. Good experiences with publishers. As I have said, they can help you with promoting your games, like in prestigious conventions like PAX East, Mix, and many more. Another indie has a good track of showcasing their games, and you should be getting a share of your player feedbacks, wish lists, and media coverage, like in our case with Jackaxe. They were also able to help shoulder financial costs of marketing and upfront for the development of our game. They have a good community of developers, and you can reach out to them for help with coding, marketing, and general experience with the releases. You will also be able to meet different people through them. All of this starts the first time you talk to them. If they are easy to go along with and they listen to you and you have open communications. I am also very grateful to have worked with Nitrom. They made Lip Day, Bomb Chicken, and Shovel Knight Deep. We have very good relationship, and they are very humble when they speak. They offered upfront during the development of the game. The game was featured prominently in App Store, and we even got a Game of the Day featuring in China, US, and UK. They are very fast in sending payments. They paid the earnings after the report was made. That's even before they received the money from Apple and Google Play and ad companies. They also shared their experience and knowledge, and they even made me my studio logo. But it's not all a fairy tale story. I also have my bad experiences. I developed two casual games, Rubik's and Swishy Hoops. Rubik's was featured, but because it was a paid game, it wasn't earning us money as we'd hoped to. We had to convert it to a free game with ads and up. That's when the relationship fell apart between us. When I made another game, Kill the Plumber, they offered publishing, but they want to charge upfront from Rubik's to that game in case I signed up. It led to another bad experience, the worst, which I will share next after this. Swishy Hoops also went sour as the communication went pretty bad even during the first conversations we had. It was a bad relationship from the start. I never got paid on the second milestone, this is during release, and the game was also heavily revised as two game modes were removed. They also made me implement a weird game over screen which penalizes the player 2 levels back unless they paid in in-game currency. We can also blame the games. As you can see in these screenshots, they are very hyper casual games, which is, for me, it's not my niche. At least for my younger self, these are not my kind of games. They are not the genre I grew up playing with. My 8-year-old me would say meh to Rubik's and Swishy Hoops if I time traveled and showed them these games. The ugly. Now we come to the ugly part. Everyone has good intentions, but something don't work out as they are planned. We have to be ready. In Pretension's game, payment was way behind. I was getting 3 months after the reports were already paid by Google Play and App Store. I first have to wait for the publisher's income report, send them an invoice, and then they have to prepare payment within 1 month, and I will have to wait another month for payment to arrive in my bank. Lately, it was delayed even more. Then the worst thing happened. They went bankrupt. They never paid months worth of revenues. It happened to other developers too. During this time, I was demanding them to either pay me or transfer the game to my account. This made them write an agreement where they will transfer my game to my account in case they miss to pay. The publisher was able to transfer my games to my account, but they lost the P12 key needed for me to update the game on Google Play Store. They said it was lost together with the computers they sold during liquidation. The Nintendo Switch version of Tower Fortress is still in progress. There were two big changes made even though there were no upfront. QA also has become very strict. We were also developing another mobile game which gave us a roller coaster emotional ride during pitching. Basically, what happened, the game was almost signed with upfront of amount we wanted, then things happened, they changed the contact person, and then they declined, and then we got another offer from another publisher, and then just get declined again. It was depressing. It's just worse for the other developers. Some developers never got their game back, some did not get paid, and some are coerced into selling their game rights and getting removed from the credits. And then I've become one of them. Since I am still embarrassed to say that we are a publisher because it's a lot more responsibility, I will just say we are distributors of games for Nintendo Switch, Xbox One, and PS4. One of the games we help distribute is Grand Guilds by Drick Studios. We were able to help them with their relaunching of their Kickstarter campaign. I was able to get a meeting with Kickstarter during PAX East. We offered the game to Utomic. We got awesome booths at Gamescom and Beat Summit. And we published the game on Nintendo Switch. Another game we published is Tower Tale. So I helped in the publishing and porting of the game. Since I'm also a game programmer, I have first-hand experience in porting games using GameMaker and in this case, Unity. This is the developer thanking me for my advice in first-hand porting experience. Dev support. Putting ourselves into publishers' shoes made us learn the hardships. I wish we can have fun so we can offer upfront and spend more time in marketing. Right now, we think we can accomplish this by setting up a game dev fund locally, or we earn enough revenue and or get funding. We're currently reaching out to different companies and groups, so we'll see. But for now, I wish you can learn these things from my experience so you won't have to suffer the bad income or the bad outcome. As for upfront, they have to be invested in the game as much as you are. Have direct communication with publishers, co-founders. Sometimes if you are talking to their agent, they can directly answer your requests and queries with no as the always answer. It gets very difficult to negotiate and explain your side. If they ask for many changes, it may not be wise to start working on them unless there's a signed agreement. We were asked for 10 different stages when we already have 3 stages, and we made 2 more stages since we plan on making 4 anyway. This is the same advice I would give even though if you have worked with them before. Remember, everyone has the best intentions, but sometimes things will not work out for the best of everyone. Number 4. Send invoice and ask for payments weeks before your milestone date. This is what you have signed up for. So no matter what happens, they are binded to pay you. 5. Be persistent and ask for your rights. And also talk to them a lot on chat, email, Twitter, Discord, etc. If there are some programming complexities involved in the request, explain it to them and the technical issues of their request. Thank you everyone for listening. So you can look for more info about our games on Facebook, our website, and you can also email me for any question you may have. Thank you, Indie Salon and Taipei Game Show.
Hey everyone, greetings from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm Wan Hazmir, CEO and Game Director at Metronomic. This is the first time I'm doing this kind of presentation. It's really strange, but yeah, we're all working from home. So I think this is a very safe way to do a presentation. My wife is handling the camera and all the sound system, everything. Say hi. Hi. I'm going to talk about how I journeyed from Final Fantasy 15 all the way to our debut game right now called No Straight Roads. I'll just talk about my journey for a while, very quickly, a little introduction. So I was a game designer in Malaysia, but I was more like a indie game designer. I wanted to have more industry experience, and it was a choice between America and Japan. So I decided to go to Japan instead. Of course, the barrier is the language, so I had to go to a Japanese language school, and yeah, I had hair last time. And my objective at the time, my sole objective was to write a 10-page game design document in Japanese. This is the game proposal. I submitted the game proposal once I graduated from the school. I sent it to a lot of the game companies, and yep, I got into Square Enix. Don't know how that happened. But yeah, and even bigger surprise was I became lead game designer for Final Fantasy 15. It was such an honor to work in a prestigious team like that because I love Final Fantasy 7. You guys play the remake? It's really an amazing game. In 2017, December, I created my own company called Metronomic, and I created it with my cousin. He's our CCO, Chief Creative Officer, and also the creative director of Metronomic. And he used to be the concept artist for Street Fighter V, illustrator for Street Fighter 4, and the animator for Stormblood as well. Very, very talented man. So I'm going to show you what we have done so far for No Straight Roads. It's going to be released really soon. So please have a look.
Yes! The name's Mayday. I wield the guitar. And he is
Zook.
And he plays the
Drums.
Punk Big Junction. That's who we are. And we're here to stop NSR from controlling everything.
There's only one music in demand right now, and that is EDM.
The people of Final City deserve to know what rock is about. It's time we fight EDM with the power of rock. The music revolution starts right now.
I am DJ Subatomic Supernova! What have you done today, simpletons?
You're disrupting our music revolution, man. Let's get this over with. Team Operation Party all night!
You ready, Zook?
Yeah.
Alright, I hope you liked the trailer. I would like to share with you how my experience in Square Enix helped to make a game like that with the team and with my cousin as well. In Square Enix, we were given a task in the FF15 team, and that is to make Final Fantasy relevant again. So we had all these posters pasted up on the whiteboard to remind us that Final Fantasy is not the king of RPGs anymore, at least at the time. And I met this great man. Oh, sorry. This great man over here. His name is Tabata-san. We call him Tabby. And he was the director of Final Fantasy 15, and now he has his own company called JP Games. In his team, Tabata-san was a really, really talented man. He knew how to give the right task to the right people, you know, and he utilized their talents very well and their interests very well as well. For example, one of the art directors, Hasegawa-san, he loves animals a lot, you know, and he's very, very, he knows a lot about the structure of bones of an animal, you know. Because of that, he also did the bone structure, the skin structure, and the muscle structure for Behemoth in Final Fantasy 15, which is why it looks so real. And another great friend of mine, which is Sun. So he was lead game designer for the Buddy team. He's also a vocalist. He cares a lot about the content of lyrics, of how to put emotional context into a game. And that's why he was given the task to make the Buddy AI for Final Fantasy 15. And he made this wonderful system called the AI photography system. When Sun gave this proposal, obviously everyone was baffled because other games were doing only a screenshot system, you know, just taking a screenshot of the game and all that. But somehow, Sun wanted to have this feeling of a road trip. So what he proposed was having an AI take a photo for you. At the time, the programmers were, you know, they just go, hey, you can't do this, it's impossible, you know. At the end of the day, he convinced the programmers and they worked together, and it became one of the most talked about system on the net, you know, on Twitter and all that. They keep sharing their photos because the photos are only theirs. A lot of them are actually captured at the moment by a third party, and that includes framing, exposure, and all this stuff. So it is not easy to program such a thing, you know, but it is crucial because of the UX. So this is one thing I learned from Square Enix, you know, the fact that, you know, you can have music, sound, game design, graphics, whatever, you know, but at the end of the day, you're going to mix all this and pour it in a cup of water, in a cup, you know, and then it becomes a cup of water. And this cup of water, it will mean different things in different contexts, you know. For example, to a marathon runner, this is like treasure, you know. In a restaurant, it might be cheap, you know, because it's free. This is what I call UX, emotional context. So the first thing that we did with Final Fantasy 15 was to define the user experience of the game. And the core user experience at the time that we decided on was the romance of a road trip. So because of that, everything that we did was to serve this purpose. This is the basic flow that I have adopted into our company, and also what we did in Square Enix as well, was we determined a goal first. Of course, this is the business goal, all right? Let's say, for example, to sell 10 million units. That was FF15. And then after that, we have inspiration. Now, what's important about this diagram is that the inspiration comes before the UX. So everything that you're thinking of, let's say, for example, you're thinking about making an Uncharted game but with Taiwanese culture, for example, then that is still inspiration. What we have to do is we have to decide the UX after that, before we decide on the specs. Having an Uncharted game but with Taiwanese elements is actually specs. But if we decide on this before we decide on the UX, then it's going to be trouble. How long have we talked already? Spoken? Don't know? Okay. As for our team as well, we're working from home right now, so we took a picture of everyone from their house, from their rooms. We have a very, very talented team, and they are a very colorful bunch. A lot of these people, they like different things, you know, and my task was to analyze each and every one of them and to know what they're interested in and possibly make a game that they would love to make as well, you know. Obviously, we cannot satisfy everyone, but some parts of the game you can actually pluck out and then, you know, make sure that they are in charge of that thing, and then they will do very, very well in it. That's the kind of thing that we want to utilize when we make a game such as, you know, even a simple game like No Straight Roads, right? Simple as in, you know, relatively to Final Fantasy 15, of course. Okay, and because of that, the result is that we have a very, very colorful world with a lot of ideas. It's a melting pot of ideas, and we also have decided on the UX for the game, and that is that your music can change the world. You can transform them physically. So for example, if you play a music next to a prop, then it will turn into a weapon. When we do a boss music, we actually have 3 genres at the same time, running at the same time, and we have 3 different channels, you know. So for example, when the child prodigy is playing piano, then it will only be the bass, of course. But when the mother comes out, we'll switch 2 of the channels to rock, or to EDM. And then when you defeat the mother, let's say for example, you reduce the mother's HP, then it will slowly go into rock. So for every single boss battle, we actually have 3 versions of the music. It's really crazy, you know. The composers work so hard to ensure that, you know, we have 3 versions of the music, and then the audio engineers would have to make sure that it's mixed properly. And this is all, just like the photography AI just now, it's all to ensure that we serve the UX. Just to highlight how we think about our game in Square Enix. This is something that my senpai, my senior, taught me. You know, it's called the Famitsu technique. So Famitsu is a magazine that is out in stores every week. You know, it's a game magazine, fully colored. There's 100+ pages. You know, it's really crazy in this digital age that you still have something like this in Japan. You have this, you know, page spread like this, for example. So this is one of the page spread for Final Fantasy 15 episode Dasukae, the trial version of the game. We think about how the game would be on the magazine first before the magazine comes out, you know. So even when you're thinking about the game idea, you think of it in a magazine format. For example, when you think about the game, can you imagine what the headline would say? So imagine the reader would flip the magazine. Would they stop at your page when they see this particular headline? And finally, what are the screenshots? When you come up with a game idea, even at the pre-production stage, think about how the magazine would look like. Then you would know how to do the elevator pitch as well to the publishers, you know. And one more thing that's very important, it's not limited to Square Enix only, it's also in Japan in general, you know. Japanese people are very visual creatures, and I think Taiwan is also the same. You know, everything has color, right? It's not enough to just express things in words. You need icons, you know, you have illustrations. Something that struck me as very, very interesting was that whenever we make a game, whenever we come up with a new idea, even if we write a game design document in Excel or Word or whatever, it is still not enough. I was taught that, you know, you have to come up with a very proper game design document with all the, you know, all the details and all that. But in Japan, I know that that would be useless. For a Japanese, they like to judge based on instinct, right? Only when you have the controller in your hands, then only you know whether it's fun or not. It's best to just straight away do it in Unreal or Unity and test it out. And I adopted the same system for our game. So we were making the game for around 8 months, or should I say 9 months. And we were nervous, you know. We don't know whether our game would fare well, you know, especially considering how the graphics was at the time. However, I insisted that we go for Tokyo Game Show 2018. And it was really fun, you know. We actually attended so many game shows. Oh yeah, this is Sharon, by the way. She's also one of the speakers, right? Yep, she is also, Imba Interactive is also our sound designer for No Straight Roads. We had a lot of feedback, and it was really great exposure for all of us, you know. And it was very important. I know awards are not very important to some people, but awards is also like a confirmation to show that you're going in the right direction, you know. You can make a game for 3 years, and it might not be the right direction. So having it out in 8 months and then testing it and all that, and then we get these awards, and then, it just gave us confidence that we're doing something right here, and we have to highlight what we're doing correctly, and we have to fix what we're doing wrongly. The game is fantastic. Of course, I'm biased because we make the game. But I think my team has done an amazing job, and I would love you all to experience this game. All right. Okay, so No Straight Roads is coming out in summer 2020. Please look out for it. Please follow our Facebook as well, our Twitter and Instagram. All right. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much. 谢谢。